The spots, western and northwestern suburbs, and a chance of rain tomorrow afternoon. 43 at O'Hare. Next news coming up at 7. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560. The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by the IRS Radio Hour with Stephen Leahy. Every Sunday afternoon at 5 on AM 560. The Answer.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So the cable news channels were aflame over the House Republicans storming of Schiff's Castle the other day. None more so than CNN commentator Keith Boykin, part of a roundtable moderated by the esteemed Jake Tapper.
Oh, yes.
Keith Boykin characterizing what the House Republicans did thusly.
This was a disgraceful stunt. I'll go further than SE would go, and I'll say that this looked like a Klan group that had assembled outside of a jail trying to get the sheriff to let them in so they could deliver their own justice against somebody who's inside. It's not a good look for our democracy. It's not a good look for the Republican Party. 47 of them apparently are already Republicans are already on these committees that are in this impeachment investigation. Out of 197 total House Republicans, that's a quarter of the entire Republican caucus is already represented, and they're creating these political stunts in order to throw off the attention. They're not focused on the issue of why Trump is being impeached. They're focused on how they can complain about the process.
And that is.
Yeah. Now, after a couple of other people chimed in, Jake Tapper returned to Boykin to see if he wanted to moderate his metaphor at all, and of course he did not.
Respectfully, I think the Klan metaphor was a little strong, and I don't want to get into the whole thing. But earlier this week we were talking about lynching and using that word lightly, and I'm not going to debate the history with it.
I understand. I use it purposely because I felt like there's a visual problem, too, to have these group of almost old white men going in defense of the white man who is already, I think, by most accounts, a racist, instead of dealing with the issue of how this person is abusing his power as president of the United States.
Well, there it is. That explains it. Yeah. Okay, next question. For more on this topic and others related to the politics on the Hill, we're pleased to be joined by Curt Mills, a senior writer at the American Conservative, theamericanconservative.com. Curt, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning.
So as Jake Tapper tried to gently point out, lynching has confirmed that President Trump is a white supremacist yet again, according to the left, despite the fact that 20 years ago, Biden, Al Green, Danny Davis, Charlie Rangel all used that in context of the Clinton impeachment. Got it. We're not allowed to use it. They are. And now also this House Republican effort to draw attention to the Star Chamber proceeding that over which Adam Schiff is presiding is effectively a Klan rally outside a jail to deliver street justice. This seems to be going actually fairly well for President Trump if it's generating these sorts of hysterics, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, first of all, is that Schiff's Castle? Is that an original? I think that's pretty funny.
Thank you.
I hadn't heard that before. I would say that for the Democrats, they risk that this is going off the rails. When this scandal first broke last month, Pelosi indicated that it would be a narrow, focused, tailored inquiry into the call between President Trump and Zelensky, and it wouldn't bring in all of the other riffraff and all the other scandals that Trump has gone through. And now, a month later, the waters, whether or not you think Trump is behind it or not, the waters have been so effectively muddied that if you ask the man on the street in Chicago or Charlotte, North Carolina, they couldn't tell you what in the world is going on. And so people have pretty much just returned to their camps.
Do you think it was wise of that group of 24 Republicans to storm the closed hearing? I mean, was this all just political theater?
The leading person on that was Congressman Gates, and Gates is nothing if not a political innovator. I don't know. I don't know. I think it remains to be seen. That being said, I do think it's striking that a sub 40, I believe he's only served a term or two, millennial congressman is taking the lead. I think it speaks to, the sort of how little matters and how sort of inert the House leadership is, that someone like Gates commands such authority, for better or worse, and I think it's striking.
Well, it is,
and House Republicans.
And it comes after a call earlier in the week by President Trump for Republicans, House and Senate, to put a little bit more stick about, to fight a little bit more the way the Democrats do. And interestingly, after that quote unquote stunt, what did you have? You have McConnell and Graham author a resolution in the Senate. I mean, this is what the Senate does, but it's still something. We're still noteworthy. That calling on the House inquisitors to be fair in their proceedings, suggesting, of course, that they're not being fair. So, it did present a moment for some sort of alliance and fighting together House and Senate Republicans.
Sure. I mean, look, the House and Senate Republicans are two different kinds of cats, generally speaking. The House is in the minority, and the Senate retains the majority. The House is, generally speaking, more sprawling and brawling, and the Senate Republicans are kind of still, the McConnells, the Romneys, the country club Republicans. But it seems that, honestly, brass tacks, whether or not Donald Trump is going to be the president, is going to be impeached and removed, by all public appearances and everything I'm hearing, so far this inquiry has failed to produce any significant breaking of ranks, and Trump stands strong. Granted, obviously, impeachment inquiry is not, necessarily the choice terrain for any politician, but the terrain he has.
You have a piece in American Conservatives about neocons who Trump effectively called scum. He's talking never Trumpers, but that's mostly the neocons, the Max Boots and the Bill Kristols of the world. But you suggest that neocons are licking their chops while watching this unfold. Well, if they're seeing the same thing that you're seeing, are they just coming to a different conclusion, or do they see some vulnerability that is not otherwise obvious?
Well, I mean, neoconservatives are an exiled fanatic contingent, and they think that with the combination of Mr. Trump's impeachment troubles combined with, at least the elite reaction to the president's pullout in Syria, or purported pullout in Syria, that this is their opportunity to return to the fold. I was merely reporting on the dynamic. Myself, I'm pretty skeptical of what they would bring to bear and whether or not there's really any constituency out in the country for their viewpoint. And I'm extremely skeptical that there is a constituency for their viewpoint anywhere in the Republican Party anymore.
It's interesting, too, because there seems to be a declining constituency among Democrats, not obviously, but somewhat subtly. And you saw it on the debate stage, where there was a lot less talk about impeachment and a lot fewer questions about impeachment, too, from the otherwise exuberant press corps, and a lot more, yes, of course, impeachment, but we also have to win.
Well, look, I think there's a couple things going on. I think this goes back and forth. I think so. Again, it gets all very confusing. If it looks like Donald Trump has done something that's really beyond the pale, and you see poll numbers that are like 80, 85, 90% of Democrats want to see him impeached and removed, and they seem to really care about it, then the Democratic candidates have no choice but to fall in line. I think if you look at like last month, someone like a Tulsi Gabbard, who's probably the most reticent to back an impeachment inquiry of Trump, felt compelled to support his impeachment overall. Now, 4 weeks later, the impeachment thing seems like it could be a sideshow. Democrats are definitely less confident than they were a month ago that they're going to retake the White House. The ostensible frontrunner, Mr. Biden, looks shaky. I don't think he's as shaky as other people think he is, but this is not a great frontrunner right now.
No.
And so the Democrats have to close ranks and get their act together, and they run the risk of having a weak frontrunner and an impeachment inquiry that's going to fail. 13 months into the re-election, that doesn't look great.
Yeah, and going back to your article when you're talking about neocons, how's the feud between Senator Mitt Romney and President Trump? Are they pleased with that fight?
Well, I mean, obviously, Senator Romney feels as if he's acting on principle, and obviously, for Donald Trump, this is the culmination of a decade of weird relations with Mr. Romney. I mean, these are two people that don't have anything in common. Romney is pretty comfortable with the pre-Trump consensus in the Republican Party. Granted, that is the pre-Trump consensus that won nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Romney lost, Trump won. They were too well, whether or not you like Romney or Trump. And they have nothing in common.
No, they have one thing in common. They both don't drink.
No,
They've never had a drop of alcohol.
They have.
I got it.
They have, no. They have another
true.
thing in
Yes.
common. They have another thing in common.
Wait.
They both use nom de plumes.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, that's true. You should never say unprecedented, and you should never say nothing. Someone will call you. We'll call you on it. But
Yes. Otherwise, we get what you're laying down.
Yes. No, I mean, look. Obviously, they have different family lives, which Romney, of course, felt the need to point out this weekend, which I thought was interesting. But they hate each other. And this seems to be irreconcilable at this point, and it's just a matter of will this be kind of like muted? Like, will Romney feel so gelded within the Republican Party that he can't go after a standard bearer as long as he's sitting in the White House, or is Romney going to pose a quixotic challenge to Trump's rule in the party and run for president himself? Don't know. I think it all depends on what's going on, and it's very day to day in Washington.
He is Curt Mills, senior writer at The American Conservative, theamericanconservative.com. Curt, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Good morning, folks.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. Vice President Mike Pence blasts Nike. Subaru recalls 400,000 of its vehicles, and New Jersey hikers rescued after a smartwatch dials for help. Those stories next.
Hi, this is Dennis Prager, and again, the Prager Store has put together something new. They have compiled every male-female hour since 2010. We've had topics and calls about marriage, kids, dating, intimacy,